There's yours.
Good morning. First of all, thank you guys for coming out this morning. You could have been doing a lot of things on Father's Day weekend, but you chose to be with us for a little time. We appreciate that. We love this area. It's a lot of fine folks that are here. Mitchell mentioned the podcast. It's called Unashamed, for those of you that hadn't heard of it. A lot of us my age and up really we're not the typical podcast crowd, but this is a pretty good one if you have some time to listen. It's me and Jason, Dad, basically doing a Robertson style Bible study, which is, we have some fun on there. You know, we do some laughing, but we also study the Word of God. I do appreciate you guys having a 9/11 remembrance this year. I just agreed to speak out at that field in Pennsylvania where those brave, regular Americans, gave their lives to save other people. And what an honor, what a way to honor them. So I'm very humbled to get to do that. And, you can't help but wonder, I spend a lot of time on airplanes, what you would do in a situation like that, right? Contemplate. I've thought about it before. I'm sure I've done some profiling on there. Don't tell anybody. As I'm looking around and seeing kind of the landscape of who's on this flight. But, to make it happen in the moment, what an amazing group of people. So I'm excited about getting to honor them. So we're going to begin today. By the way, we'll have some breaks, so don't worry about that. We can get some coffee and go to the bathroom. But we got basically 3 sessions that we want to share with you today. And we want to get started talking a little bit about us. You see the picture up there. So that's our motley crew from North Louisiana. And you'll notice there's only one in the bunch other than the women without a beard in that picture. I was previously known as the beardless brother, although Lisa has, in her older age, seemed not to mind as much if I just keep it cropped a little bit and keep a few whiskers. So this is the first
Bad eyesight.
Yeah, it's on. Try it again.
Bad eyesight.
No, it's not. Speak into it a little bit. Get it going here.
Hello,
There
hello.
we
There
go.
we go.
Give them one more time.
All right, one more time. Bad eyesight.
All right, that's pretty good. So you see this crew and you wonder, how do you really come out of that crew? Contrary to popular internet rumors, we weren't born with blinds. Here you go. We weren't born with beards. You see there, we're actually pretty normal people. And then look at kind of what it evolved to. And so you say, well, why did you not want to have that look, with the long hair and the long beard? Well, a couple of reasons. One is I didn't want to get stuck with that look, because once you become famous being that person, then that's it, right? Willie'd lose a lot of money, if he completely shaved his beard. So I didn't want to get stuck with that. And the second reason is because of this woman standing right here. She really wasn't into the homeless look. She says I'm the best looking Robertson.
Amen.
Which is great, right? We're here at a marriage refresher. What thing do you not want to hear than your wife says you're the best looking one in your family? But I have to say, looking at that picture, the bar is low, right? I'm not really working hard is what I'm saying. I'm shaving a little bit, I wear deodorant, I bathe regularly, and that pretty much puts me in the upper class of this family. Tell them what your worst nightmare is, babe.
To roll over one morning and look at something that looks like Phil or Cy. When you're just waking up, just think about that. And you roll over and go, that's scary.
So every year, typically during teal season, did you get the top button is the headband? During teal season is when, in the past, I would start growing my beard. And so, in the early stages, it's starting to fill in. And so that's usually in early September for us down in Louisiana. And so we had the same discussion, seemed to be every year in the blind. I would start growing my beard. And then Cy and Dad would start making fun of me. They say, oh, look at Al, he's got his Yasser Arafat working, right? Which I find highly offensive. Number one, because Yasser Arafat was a terrorist, who likes to be compared to those guys. And then my beard is much better than Yasser Arafat. See how splotchy his is? Mine wasn't splotchy. It was just groomed, conditioned. Dad calls it the psychiatrist beard when he gets all the way out, right? So I always have the same retort every year. Have you two looked in the mirror lately? If you want to talk about me looking like Yasser Arafat, I'm just saying, right? The picture tells 1,000 words. Today we're here to talk about marriage, obviously, and relationships. And so my debut on Duck Dynasty was in season 4 because I had been at our church, as our minister and our preacher. And so it took me about a year, which turned out to about 30 episodes, 3 seasons, a year and a half, to come on to the show. And I came in when we were at the peak of our popularity. And so the season premiere that year was an episode called Till Duck Do Us Part. And it's still probably one of the most popular episodes we ever did. If you've watched the show, you might remember it. We had an honoring gathering of mom and dad being together for 50 years. And because of their story and where they came from, it really was a special moment for all of us. We're not actors, so there was a lot of tears shed during that episode. It's just because it really meant something to all of us because we knew, the journey that mom and dad had been on. It is still the highest rated cable reality television show episode ever watched that night. And I thought, what a neat thing, because before that, the highest rated episode was the one where, what were their names? They had 8 kids, Kate and somebody. But anyway, the one they divorced was the highest rated show. Had like 9.8 million that night. Ours had about 12 million. And I thought, isn't that neat that America finally responded with, you know what, we'd rather celebrate people staying together rather than people falling apart. And I get it. The other is kind of train wreck TV, but, Duck Dynasty wasn't like that. We were about relationships and staying together. So it's a neat moment for all of us. Mom and dad were 16 and 14 when they first got together. They tell their story about the first date, mom walking with dad off the football field. I guess that was the thing back in the early 60s. And mom's dad died right after that, suddenly, 49 years old of a heart attack. And so her mom, who was quite a bit younger than her dad, she just lost it. It destroyed her because he basically was her whole world. So she just went off the deep end immediately. She began drinking. She started dating way too quickly. And usually when you're drinking and dating too quickly, you're finding men that will facilitate that lifestyle. And that's what happened to her. And so my mom wound up an orphan almost overnight. She was 14. Mom was off. Her sister had married and moved away, and now her dad was gone. And so dad sort of stepped into that role. And he was only 16 years old. Of course, he was on the football team, and, the girls were after him. Mom was a cheerleader, and they seemed like the perfect couple, and they probably were. And dad already, from the beginning, was sort of seen as her protector. And that's what she said. She said, I always wanted a pioneer man. And she got one when she got my dad. Unfortunately, as happens many times when you see teenagers without supervision, by the time she was 16 and dad was 18, she found out she was pregnant in 1964 with yours truly. I'm grateful to my mom that even, 9 years before Roe v. Wade, that she chose life, or else I wouldn't be here today to be able to share with you, but she did. But how would you make it? She had just turned 17 when I was born. She still had to go back to high school to finish her senior year once I was born. Dad was playing college football at Louisiana Tech University. And so I was raised by 2 teenagers on a college campus. It's a miracle I'm alive and here today. I just got to tell you that. I've heard from more people through the years that took care of me and that watched me. I've heard stories about me wandering down the road. My aunts and uncles called me Alan Jones. So one time a policeman stopped me. I'm 3 years old walking down a main road because I had slipped loose from my babysitter. And the police officer said, what's your name? I said, Alan Jones, because that's what they had always told me. That's what my uncles and aunts called me. And they were like, we don't know who you are. Can you show us where you live? So it's amazing God's favor and hand were on me, no doubt about it, for most of my life, and a blessing. This next picture, I think I showed last time I was here. This is our family in 1972. This family was in serious trouble. This family was about to break apart. Mom was pregnant with Willie in this picture, so it was 1972. And this family had no idea that there could have been a Duck Dynasty family. In 2017, we filmed the last episode of the show. And in that last episode was our clip show. And there's kind of a stately picture of 4 generations of faith. That was in 2017. Now, that 72 family could never have imagined this group of people because they were just struggling to get through one day. They were about to split up, which we did. Mom and Dad, had a terrible relationship. All of us loved Dad, but feared him, and not in a good way. And so it was a difficult time for our family. But through God's vision of seeing the possibilities and finally an openness for Mom and Dad to finally want to have a relationship with him, that made it possible. And it was a long process, about a 40-year humility training that I'll tell you about in a minute. But I love showing those pictures in contrast because many of you that watch the show, you love this family. You appreciate, you respect this family. But you didn't and wouldn't have respected at all that 72 family because we were a hot mess running a bar on the Arkansas-Louisiana line. We all go through things, is my point. And it's up to us to decide whether we're going to go in together or not. Now, I have to tell you, as our family sort of advanced and finally got right, first it was Mom, then it was Dad, our lives were finally better. We're living in West Monroe. We're very active at the Whites Ferry Road Church, the same church that I would work for my whole career in ministry. And things are great. And so this should have been the best time of my life because a preacher and his wife had kind of taken me under their wing. So I had a lot of good Bible base. Now my family was all enjoying church together and Christianity and loving each other. And Dad was a completely different person. Life was good. But then it's just almost like the evil one had this target on them and then it just went to me. I was about 14 when that process started in my heart and mind. And I can remember it well. I was going to 9th grade. I was on a school bus. We were going to high school. It was the first time to be at this high school, or 10th grade actually. And I'm on this bus and we're going in and a girl walked on the bus that I'd known the previous year in the 9th grade. And man, something had changed either in her or me in those 3 months of summer because I viewed her differently. And I remember now looking back, that was the point in time where the seed was planted, the whisper in my ear, oh, we've got a lot of things to discover here that you don't know about yet. And that began my dance with the devil, is what I call it. By the time I got to 16, I graduated high school. And because I started when I was 4 in Arkansas, because I guess in Arkansas you can just go whenever you want to. I've never heard a good explanation of why I started at 4. But I got out when I was 16. And the problem with that is I was so, immature and full of myself. And now I was like 2 full years into this, secret. I was a double secret agent. I had my place there on row 3, with the other kids in the youth group. But man, I was singing the songs. I had the look. Everybody thought I was a really nice young man. All the little old ladies loved me and pinched my cheek. But I was terrible. I was plotting the whole time was what I was going to pull off this weekend. And then we just ride it out on Sunday. So that was my life. It's during this period of time that 2 of my greatest regrets still, at 56, 40 years later, they're still there. I don't take shame from that because Jesus took that away a long time ago. But there'll always be regret. One is I turned my back on my first love. Jesus had been there for me through the hardest parts of my life, protecting me. His hand of favor was on me. I knew that. I knew he had special things in store for me. And I turned my back on him so I could dance with the devil. I regret that. I wasted my teenage years. That's why I spent so much time working with youth and youth camps, because I'm like, don't give the devil your best years, those teenage years when you could do so many great things if you stay focused. Second thing I did during this period of time is I broke the heart of the woman I now love the most. When I met her during this period, and she'll tell you about how that went, she needed someone, a guide. She was in such focus and look for something to bring her out of some things that had happened to her. But instead of being her guide to that which is good and holy, which eventually I was, I guided her instead into just depravity and worse things. And it's still a regret, because a lot of things that happened to her, happened to me, happened during this period of time could have all been avoided had I just been a better man and just followed Christ. I broke her heart when I left her in West Monroe. I took off to New Orleans because I said I had to find myself. Well, myself was in a bad place. And when you go to the city of depravity, I'm going to tell you what you're going to find: more trouble. And that's what happened to me. I was there about a year and a half until I turned 18. And I was seeing this woman that I worked with at a hospital. She was 26. I was 18, but telling everybody I was 21 with a fake ID, right? And turns out she was lying too, because she was married and was separated from her husband. So one Sunday morning, I was leaving her apartment, and her husband had been waiting on me in a little ambush style, flattened 2 tires on my car, and then decided he was going to teach me a lesson with my own crowbar as I'm trying to fix my tires. It was a mess. It's, again, a wonder that I didn't die on that street. I tell you one thing it did do, though. Sometimes people are so hard-headed and hard-hearted that a crowbar will wake you up. You know, I've met some other people from the Crowbar Club. We formed a club now. When somebody just beats the fire out of you and you realize, you know what? This life doesn't seem so great. But there I was, sitting on a city street in Kenner, Louisiana, broken, bleeding, and left with nothing. It was in that place where I would finally have to make a decision. I'll turn it over to Lisa, my better half, to tell you more of the story.
I am the youngest of 3 children. I had an older brother who was 12 years older than me, and I had an older sister who was 7 years older than me. They are both deceased. In my family, there was lots of drug and alcohol problems. My dad was an alcoholic. My sister was an alcoholic. My brother was an alcoholic. And they both died. My sister was 49 when she passed away. And my brother was 56 when he passed away. So in our family, we had lots of hard times as far as, you know, being on drugs and alcohol. Whenever I was about 7, I used to stay with my grandmother because my mom worked outside the home. And so my older brother and sister didn't want to have to take care of me, so I stayed with my grandparents. And I had a couple of uncles that lived there, and of course, drug and alcohol was part of their life too. I think back to, you know, staying with my grandparents, and at different points, just flashes come in of my uncles chasing one another around the house with butcher knives, the cops coming, raiding the house, looking for my uncle because, you know, he had been charged with, you know, distributing something and didn't show up for court, so the laws came to get him. And my grandmother would hide him under a bed, under the porch, whatever. But I mean, I just think back on that time in my life, and it was normal, but oh my goodness, was it so dysfunctional. But whenever I was around 7, and that's my earliest memory, I cannot remember anything before age 7. My uncle, who was addicted to all kinds of drugs, started doing things to me that I didn't think were right, but I'm only 7. I'm supposed to trust those that are within my family. And so whenever he told me, let's just don't tell anybody about this, let's just keep this to ourselves, because you know you'll get in trouble. I mean, I believed it. I thought, yeah, I probably will. I'll get in trouble for this. That set me on a path of dishonesty because at 7, I couldn't tell anybody what was going on. And that went on until I was 14. But at 14, I was bigger than he was, and so I finally said, no more. But whenever I was in the 6th grade, I went to school one day, and there was this guy there, and he was so cute. The cutest boy I'd ever seen. And he may or may not be in this room this morning. But the problem was I was in the 6th grade, he was in the 8th grade, so he had no idea who I was. But I used to follow him all during recess, or if we went to lunch, or if we had a fire drill, wherever.
They call that stalking now, by the way. So.
I mean, I just thought he was the cutest thing. At this time, I'd never told anybody what was happening to me, but I thought it was happening to everybody. I had no idea. But I thought people knew, but then again I thought, you know what, he doesn't know. He could be my knight in shining armor. He could just, take me away from all of this. In the 6th grade. The problem was he had no idea who I was. So he left after that year, and I did not see him again until I was in the 10th grade. Well, by the time I was in the 10th grade, from 6th grade to 10th grade, you do a little bit of growing up. In the 6th grade, I had braces on and wore big red glasses. And in the 10th grade, I'd gotten contacts, and I still had braces, but, I didn't look quite as gawky as I did in the 6th grade. So whenever we would go out on the weekend, what we would do is we would drive around and around and around McDonald's parking lot because you never knew who was going to come in as you went out. So you had to go back through again. Well, I was about to leave because I didn't see any of my friends or anything. And so I come around, and my cousin's standing out there, so I stop and talk to him. And somebody sticks their head in my window. And when they do, I kind of go, kind of catch my breath a little. And he looks in the window at me, and he says, "Whoa." Now, I don't know if y'all know what redneck language of whoa is, but that just means, wow, you filled out.
It's exactly what it means in redneck.
So I was noticed, finally, And so he asked me out on a date, so I said yes. So the next day he said, well, just meet me at McDonald's. Well, that was the first strike with my mother, because if you're going out on a date, you're not meeting somewhere. He's coming here to the house. So anyway, I wanted this so bad, because ever since 6th grade, I had my eye on this guy. And so I met him in McDonald's, and he brought 2 of my cousins with him, not just 1, but 2. So I was like, why are we here and why are they here? He said, it's a double date. So anyway, I get in the back seat with him, and they're driving. And I didn't know the things that were going on in his life at this point. But I soon found out because they were drinking and smoking marijuana. So I kind of figured this is not the same guy I knew when I was in the 6th grade. But again, I will not be deterred because this is my man. This is my knight in shining armor. So we go out, and the night ends up with me in the back seat, with him passed out, and we're sitting in the parking lot of a strip club, and both my cousins are inside. And so, probably maybe people say that you should have walked away at that point, don't try this again. But nope, I kept going back. It's just, I don't know, it's just something you have to keep picking at, and you got a sore, you just got to keep picking at it. Sorry, I'm not comparing you to a sore.
Never been compared to a sore before. Thank you.
But by the third date, I hear, if you love me, you will. And, I'm 15 years old, and I'm thinking, well, yeah, I love you. I've loved you since I was in the 6th grade. And so I gave myself to him. And at 15, I thought this is going to last forever. Because, see, you give yourself to somebody, and it lasts forever, right? Wrong. Within 6 months, he was gone. He went to New Orleans to sow his wild oats, and he broke my heart. And he sent me on an adventure that turned out to be a disaster. I just had to find that love that I had lost with him. And so it was through guys, I just kept dating, and I got in fight with girls because I would go out with their boyfriends, I was just a terrible person. But I was looking for love in all the wrong places. Remember that song? That was one of my favorite songs back then. And so I dated this guy that was a cousin to my best friend. And he was older. And we dated about 9 months. And I found out at 9 months, when we had been dating for 9 months, that I was pregnant. Now, I didn't know why I would wake up every morning and be sick at my stomach. I had no idea. But my mother did. My mom said, Lisa, you need to go have a pregnancy test. I was like, why would I need a pregnancy test? You see, you only get pregnant once you get married, That's what I thought. But sure enough, I go and have the pregnancy test, come back home. And I really did not have a church family because at this point I was not living a Christian life. And my parents weren't going to church. We had a thing in our family, and if all the kids were doing well, we went to church. But if the kids weren't doing well, we didn't go to church. See, it was, you had to look good. And if anybody knew that somebody was messing up, we couldn't go out, we couldn't go to church. You're not even living right. We missed the point that everybody that walks in a building is a sinner. We missed it. But, so I talked to my parents, and my mom said, Lisa, you need to have an abortion. This is not a baby. This is just tissue in your body. And I was like, okay, what is that? I'd never heard of an abortion. Every woman I'd ever known went to the doctor, went to the hospital, came home, and had a baby. Or they miscarried. But I had never heard of abortion. So she tells me, look it up in the yellow pages. Back then we didn't have any other way to look things up. She said, look in the yellow pages and find a doctor that does that. So I was like, okay. She said, it's kind of just a medical procedure. Okay. So I do that. But I'm thinking, what is that? What is an abortion? So I go to the clinic that day, and I walk in, and I just felt that something was not right because it was dark, it was extremely cold, And I was a number. I was not a person. I had no name. I only had a number. And, I'm thinking, I'm not real sure that I need to be here, but, I'm thinking this, I got to get this glob out of me. I don't know, before it turns into a baby. And I go back to the back, and I'm voicing my concerns. And the nurse that was there told me 3 lies that day. She said, Lisa, this is just a glob of tissue, and we're just going to go in and remove that glob of tissue. That was the first lie. Because now I know that glob of tissue was my child that I paid someone to remove. The second lie she told me was, after you leave here today, you'll be good as new. You won't have any problems from this. You can go to school next week. On Monday, you'll be fine. And I was like, okay, another lie. After this pregnancy, I had 3 pregnancies. And all 3 of those pregnancies were problem pregnancies. I lost the 3rd baby. The 3rd lie that this lady told me was, Lisa, after you leave here today, you don't ever have to think about this again. Just put it out of your mind. It's over. It's done with. That's been almost 40 years ago. And I have to tell you, probably every day since I've thought about it. That was a lie, because you don't get over something like that. After I had all of my, each time I had babies, and then after I lost the 3rd one, I really thought, this is my punishment. God's punishing me for what I did at 16 years old. And He's punishing me through my babies. Now that was a hard pill to swallow. And I believed that until I was 33 years old. But at 33, I knew our God doesn't punish us for our past sins. That lady told me a lie, and something they did to me that day is why I was having problems. I couldn't date this guy anymore. Once I had the abortion, I couldn't even look at him. And so I was, dating around, but I found this guy that I went to church with, and he was a really, really nice guy. So when we started dating, I said, no drugs, no drinking, and no sex. And he said, well, Lisa, I don't do drugs and I don't drink, and I can wait. So I was thinking, that's great. And so we had been dating about 6 months, I guess. We talked about getting married. I mean, when you're at this age, you're thinking, I was 18 by then, 17, almost 18. I'm thinking, okay, I need to get married. This desire is not going anywhere. And so my phone rings, and some of you will understand this. Most of you will understand this. I had to answer that phone to know who was on the other line because there was no caller ID. I also had to listen for the ring because we were on a party line. So I had to make sure it was even my ring. So I answered the phone. Hello. And I hear this voice, and my heart catches again. And he says, hey, I'm back. I'm just like, oh my goodness. And I said, yeah, I heard you were back. I mean, I knew he was back. I kind of kept details on every place that he had been. And he said, I heard you were dating somebody. Yep, I'm dating somebody. He's asked me to marry him. He's a really good guy. I'm trying to make him jealous, you know. And he said, yeah, I heard that. And I said, yeah. He said, you want to go out on Friday? And I said, yep.
She dropped that poor guy like a hot rock.
And it wasn't, but we started out, we were going to get married in 2 years because I was just graduating high school. 2 years turned into a year. A year turned into 9 months. And 9 months turned into 6 months. So within 6 months, we got married.
At this point, our biology was overtaking our theology. And so we realized, especially with our past, that we needed to get married. And I wanted to marry. You know, my life had changed. I decided when I was sitting on that city street that by the help of the police officer, a lot of police officers there, most of them treated me terribly, which I deserved. But one of them treated me with kindness. That's why I love first responders. If you're a first responder, you may have the opportunity to be with a person at the worst time in their life when they're finally ready to do something different. In just a word. This guy just sat down with me for a few minutes. He was kind, and he gave me a word. He said, you need to go home. You don't need to be in New Orleans. You're going to die here. It's going to chew you up and spit you out. And he was right. So I loaded up. The guy, after he beat me up, he beat my poor car up, my Monte Carlo. And I load up with the tire tools stuck in the windshield. And I'm heading to North Louisiana. I'm going home. Now, I had to work on a speech on my way home, sort of like the kid did in Luke 15, right? I mean, I don't have to work here, if I do work here, I know I'm not right yet, and I know I got to prove myself, and had the whole speech worked out. When I pulled up in the front yard, Mom and Dad came down to meet me, just like the Father did in Luke 15. Didn't he make me come in, just came to meet me. And before I could even get my speech going, Dad said, welcome home, son. We got duck calls to build. And that was it. There was no list. There was no badgering. There was no, here's what's got to happen now. I was welcomed in grace. That night we killed a fattened catfish and had a celebration because a lost son had come home, right? So it was out of that newness that first I decided no women for me. Women were not good for Alan. It wasn't their fault. It was me. So I thought, I'm going to go the role of Jesus and Paul, and we're just going to do it alone. So that lasted about a month. And I realized that wasn't going to work. And I never forgot about Lisa. You see, I bore a lot of blame as well as her own choices. Because I was in a position to help. Instead, I hurt, and then it hurt going further. Now there's someone we have to meet in heaven and apologize to. Because of us, generations are gone. Bad call. So I called her up that fateful day and started a relationship, which led to quite the happening in our parish. It was our wedding, November 9th, 1984. About 25 people there. You notice Dad's not in the picture. He was selling duck calls. He already had I planned the wedding. We planned the wedding from one Friday to the next because I didn't believe in long engagements. And so that's what we got for 1 week of planning. It again made me so endeared to her mom and dad, to basically spring it on them in a week. But after about 10 or 12 years, we worked all that out as well and wound up having a good relationship. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to pick up from here and tell you a little bit about what has led us to what we're doing in marriages. You understand, the reason we start talking about what we're talking about today with what we just did is because we want everybody in this room to know you could never be judged by Lisa and I, because you've heard about how we started. The grace of God brought us to the place we are today. And there's a little bit more bad we got to talk about before we can get to all the good stuff. Because Satan really worked us over in some powerful ways. We went into our marriage with a lot of baggage. I mean, piles of baggage. And so we come back, we're going to tell you a little bit about what happened as a result of that and what finally happened to change us and allowed us to be here